You're listening to the Hella Well with Danielle show, a podcast taking women of color on a journey exploring all things wellness and travel related. We're all about showing you how to put on your oxygen mask first and creating lasting self-care habits that will free you to travel the world and live the life you truly desire, and not one you have to fake loving. I'm your host, Danielle Washington. Now let's buckle up and start this journey. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Hella Well with Danielle podcast. I am your host, Danielle Washington, and this week, you're going all in. I am ready to fight someone, but before we fight anyone, and we kind of come in here because I've already staged the room because this is about to be a heated conversation, so if I get emotional, forgive me now. But, I wanted to say before I started this episode, thank y'all for the love, the appreciation, and just the moments and feelings of care about last week's podcast episode, which was on learning to be me. Like, oh my God, when you just appreciate people coming out and be like, sis, I see you. I see your growth. I'm proud of you and the work you're doing, and I'm proud of your vulnerability. So know that I'm not just doing this to be doing this, but I'm hoping you guys get something out of it. But I'm also humble enough and learning how to not just give, but also to receive. So I just wanted y'all to know that I receive your love. I'm very appreciative. And I just need you to know that. So now that I got all that out the way, okay, I'm ready to throw some bones. And again, if you aren't watching us on YouTube, just so you know, this podcast is on YouTube officially. So you can see the podcast, or you can just be listening to it on Apple, Spotify, Google Play, and a couple other places. And so let's get started. So this week, unless you've been under a rock or doing a social media detox, which I'm a strong believer in social media detox, you have heard the story of what's going on with Naomi Osaka, who is an amazing tennis player who is of, mixed race. So she is, of African descent and Japanese descent. And she wanted to take time for herself. She saw a need for her self-care and decided to be proactive about it and y'all be shading me left and right and woo-woo. And, I already have been having issues since the 2018 U.S. Opens. And so I'm going to back up and I'm going to decline this mandatory press conference situation to take care for my own self-needs, for my own self-care. And so she decided to decline what is deemed a mandatory press conferences that she's supposed to have as part of being part of the French Open. So this is at the French Open this last week, or this week that just happened. And then she got fined for it. She got fined $15,000 for saying, I need to put my self-care first because I'm not okay. I recognize that I'm not okay. And I not only just recognize it, but I see it and I'm going to be proactive about it and be like, I can't do this. I want to play. I love the sport. I love being here. But in order for me to be able to do all this stuff and to be at the greatness level that you want me to be at, I'm going to need to decline this over here so I can be able and prepared and have the love for myself and take a small break and set a boundary. And she got fined $15,000. Not only did she get fined $15,000, but the grand slams all came together in a unified voice and basically threatened her, basically saying we believe in mental health for players and we're all for it, but we advised Naomi that she can have further situations, aka expulsion, threats of more fines going to her. So it's like, we your self-care is okay, but do you know that you're putting your career in jeopardy? That's some BS. That's some straight BS. And I love her coming back on Twitter. She tweeted, I believe that the whole situation is kicking a person while they're down. And I don't understand the reasoning behind it, is what she tweeted. And regarding, how doing multiple interviews, especially after an athlete has lost a match, can take a toll on someone. I'm just not going to subject myself to people that doubt me. Like, that's for real. Like it is time, and this is what this podcast is about. It is time to call BS on self-care only being when it's acceptable to others. Self-care can only happen when it's acceptable to others, and it's not a inconvenience to others, especially in the workforce. And that's what happens. And it's not just for athletes. And I want to make sure this is hella clear. This is not just for athletes. This is for all people, and it's women and people of color. I'm putting both. You don't have to just be a black woman, a woman of African descent to have this to understand what's going on. As women and people of color, people are like, oh, we need you. Self-care is important. Employers are especially like, oh, we get that you need self-care, but, we need to make sure that your self-care doesn't affect our financial, revenue, and it's convenient to us. So, oh, we may need to work you like a dog. And after we've worked you like a dog against your own well-being and all these different things, if we deem you to have time, we're then going to allow you. Namaste, love. Nah, boo. It ain't about that. That ain't self-care. And I love the most, so there was this panel of Duke athletes. I'm not a Duke fan. Anyone knows me. I don't really represent Dukes. I'm a UNC girl, Tar Heels all the way. But I'm going to reference the situation because I think it's important to say. So a bunch of Duke players Duke had a panel with a bunch of, Black athletes that play for Duke who are excelling in what they do. I mean, we'll shout out, they are amazing. They're not just athletes, but they're also student athletes. And, they have to prove that, it gets the stereotype, like, I'm not just a dumb jock. I'm doing great in my schoolwork, and I'm doing great in my, in my field of sports. But one of them, I think her name is Alexandria Lambert, said, I'm just going to rip the Band-Aid off. It looks a lot like slavery. And it does. And I feel bad for professional athletes or collegiate athletes, and also professional entertainers, and especially people who are of color or are women, because my question to everyone is, when do Black female or people of color female entertainers, athletes get to be human? Naomi Osaka is human first, period. There ain't no questions about that. And as a human first, before being an entertainer, before being, professionally paid for her gift and all these different things, she has human needs, just like you and me. We have human needs. And oftentimes these jobs be forgetting that we're human first. We're not employee first. We are humans first. Again, we are not employees first. We are not doers first. We are humans first. And then as humans, we are not perfect. Always say that. As a human, none of us are perfect. But on top of that, as human, we have needs for our well-being. And oftentimes in the workplace, they're just forgotten. They're like, sorry, not sorry. And I go back to think about, Colin Kaepernick, who, is from the 49ers, shout out, was from the 49ers, and all that he went through, and the whole, 45 saying, and everyone else saying, shut up and play. No, boo, it's not shut up and play. I hate that it does feel like slavery, because it's like, we just want you to entertain us. We just want you to do what we expect you to do, make us some money. We don't need to hear your political thoughts. We don't need to hear that, oh, I'm not okay. We don't care if you're not okay. And that's essentially what they're saying. The Grand Slams came back, later on in the week. Like, oh, no, what we really meant to say is we're all for self-care, and we're about working with Naomi. No, you all weren't about working with Naomi. Y'all were about working with Naomi when it started getting real, and realized that the public impression against y'all was like, oh, y'all ain't ish. Y'all ain't ish for not accepting that. The sis who has been making y'all some cash and, getting more people involved in the sport and excited about the sport, especially after 2018, the US Open, is needing some time for her. She is a human. She has needs. And we were just like, sorry, we just don't care. Whatever. And I just want us to really think about this. We treat these people like superheroes. We treat, Serena Williams, we treat, LeBron James and Naomi Osaka as these superheroes that do great things, because they are freaking amazing. But again, let's keep it real. They're human. And they are out here trying to thrive and not just survive and not just here for our entertainment. And that goes again, I mean, like entertainers and professional athletes and collegiate athletes are on a different level, but the same thing goes for us basic people. I consider myself basic, even though I'm not basic, but like people who are in the workforce, and like we've all had our experience, especially as a person of color or as a female, having the need to work harder, do more just to be deemed average, just to fit in, and all these different things. There's a lot of stress. I mean, the workforce environment is stressful for a female, and especially a female of color. And I'm just going to say it, it's different. It's not the same. We don't get the same privileges as others. We don't have the same stresses as others. Like, I always wonder, like, there's that Palm Mooney thing. I forgot what it is. It's like people, like, what, I think I even wrote it down. Let's see if I wrote it down. I'm like looking at my notes because I was like, this is funny. I am a huge fan of Dave Chappelle's show. And so Paul Mooney says in one of his skits or whatever, is like, everybody wants to be an N. Y'all figure out what the N word is, but nobody wants to be an N. In other words, people want to have that non-black, they want to, they non-blacks want the black culture, but they don't want to be black people. They don't want experience. They don't know what it feels like to be a person of color in the workforce. They don't understand the unspoken beliefs and the unspoken rules. And then some of the unspoken rules is like, again, self-care is acceptable only when it's convenient to us as the employer or to others. And it doesn't have to be to the workplace, but I'm talking specifically today about the workplace. With self-care, there's this unspoken belief that self-care is acceptable unless it's inconvenience to us. And, women of color or people of color and women in general should be grateful for the good job and act accordingly. You should act accordingly. Like, you have this, like, people are like, well, Naomi, it gets paid millions and all this money and she has all these endorsements. Like, she should be happy. She should be grateful for this job. She should be able to suck up and take those press conferences, no matter what it feels like, whether she's depressed and everything like that. We don't care because look at her. She's getting paid for this. How dare she take time and say, I need time for me. I need to take a break. I need to step away from this because this is affecting my mental well-being. But nope, they're like, nope, you're in a good job. You make a good living. And people say that. I remember needing to quit a really great job that I had, just because it didn't feel right. It wasn't in alignment for me, and it was making me feel physically and mentally ill. But I felt so guilty because I'm like, everyone's like, well, it's a good job. Like, why would you leave? Why would you leave? That's just stupid of you. You're just so ungrateful for all these experiences that they're offering you. And I remember leaving, and right before I left, like, the CEO of that company was like, you're stupid for leaving. And I'm like, no, you're stupid for not recognizing that self-care is important for all your employees, not just for you and your family and when it's convenient for you, but that, by giving your employees and making a culture where self-care, it matters and it's important to the culture of the company, not creating that culture, you're going to lose people. People are going to be burnt out, and it's not going to go well for anyone. And that's exactly what I feel like the culture of that, that I am seeing as a individual watching the situation with Naomi Osaka, is that they weren't creating a culture that says self-care matters. They were saying for public experiences, but at the same time saying, oh, we think about self-care matters, but we're going to fine you we're going to find you because you didn't express well enough to our opinion that you needed self-care. So we're going to fine you, and we're going to threaten you with more fines and more actions if you continue with this behavior. So you better shut up and play. And that whole shut up and play, shut up and work is what many people of color hear on a regular basis in the workforce. And it is just unacceptable because it's this unspoken belief that we just need to shut up and play, shut up and do your job, and act accordingly. We don't want to see your attitude. We don't want to see that you're stressed and you're burnt out. We need you to be the workhorse that we paid you for. Also looks, again, very similar to slavery. Do you remember that when it was like, shut up and work? We need you to shut up and work, breed these kids, pick our cotton, do everything, fix everything so, the madam looks right, do all these other things and be happy because you have a piece of dirt to lay your head on. We're saving you. So you should be happy and that we're giving you this good life. And then it's BS. It's just BS. We just, we aren't slaves anymore. I don't, Juneteenth is coming up, but we were freed quite some time ago, and it still feels like we're still fighting for our freedom in the workforce. We're fighting for the freedom to make boundaries, and that's exactly essentially what she was fined for. Naomi Osaka was essentially fined for making a boundary and saying that her self-care mattered. She was fined for saying, I need to take care of me, and I'm making this boundary protect my well-being. I love the sport, but I also love me. And that is BS, and it just pisses me off. But, let's be real. Let's call a spade a spade. As a woman of color, or just people, no, I'm going to stick with women of color because that's what I am, that's what I know. We live in a world where women of color, especially Black women, are not valued. They value our culture. They value looking like us enlarging their lips, their backsides, dressing like us, having hair like us. I remember Allure back in the day did this whole article about, how to get an afro, teaching white women how to get an afro. And I was like, are you effing kidding me? Like, it's just, so many people want to admire and exoticize who we are, but they don't want to take care of us and they don't want to support our well-being. I'm not saying everyone's that way. I'm not saying the whole world feels this way. But I would say, we as a culture, as a group, are hella, just disrespected. Malcolm X said it, and we just aren't valued as much as other in the world. And, the reality of it all is saying no is saying yes to yourself. And I'm proud of Naomi for setting a boundary because she needed it. And I'm proud, and I know it wasn't easy. And even if you look at the comments later on, her almost apologizing for creating this boundary, like, oh, well, I guess I could have said it differently, better. No, sis, you said what you needed to say in the way you need to say it. You were in a situation where they weren't respecting you. They weren't respecting that you needed something. And so you said what you had to say, and there ain't no apologies about it. Boundaries are important in the workplace. Without boundaries and self-care in the workplace, people are going to be hella burnt out. And you're just going to be on that hamster wheel going. And I've been that person. I've been that person who felt like I couldn't take time off because, oh my God, what would my employer say? I remember when I left this one job, I had over 300 hours of PTO because there never was a good time. Like they would tell me like, oh, you need to take PTO because, it's on the books and, you won't keep acquiring more. But I'm like, when I would try to take PTO, they're like, oh, sorry, it's not a really good time for us right now. So yeah, though you may be feeling burnt out and exhausted and needing a break and, you feel depressed and you're having issues sleeping, you're not eating. We get that. We support you, but we're going to need you to do it when it's convenient to us. That's the BS that we hear all the time. Burnout is real. And so being able to prioritize your self-care, setting boundaries in the workplace will help you prevent from burning out. It also helps you maintain healthy relationships and respond appropriately to stress. Because think about it, and I have been this person. I hate to say that I have been, but it is what it is. When you are so stressed out and you're burnt out and exhausted and people were crossing the boundaries that you may have tried to set, or you didn't even set a boundary because you felt guilty. You knew that it was never going to be, it accepted in the first place to say that I need self-care. And then you get to the point where you're like, F it, you blow up. We just blow up and it is what it is, and it's not what it is, but when you're so stressed out and you aren't setting healthy relationships, we oftentimes let it build up and build and build and build and build to the point where it explodes and it's a whole other thing. So you may be blowing up on someone who it's not even about them and it's about something else, but you're projecting it onto him because you've let it just snowball into this big, big thing. And that's what it is. And so by setting boundaries and making your self-care a priority in the workforce, early on in your situation and not letting it snowball, it helps you to reduce, the inappropriate, stress, fallouts that can happen. And the reality of all, setting boundaries is life-saving and it's vital in the workforce. It's just something that we need to do, but we just often feel like we can't, as a person of color working in like the normal workforce, like I always feel like we have to work harder. We're under this microscope and criticized disproportionately from our other coworkers. And I've experienced it, my friends have experienced it. You think about, think of another Serena Williams. Think of Serena Williams and how often she's fined and, all these different things they do for her, against her that doesn't have to do with anyone else. And, I would say even other women, like there was another woman who wasn't black in tennis. I forgot her name. I think it was Alex, something like that, whatever. But like she got fined she saw that she changed her shirt in a quick 2-minute break and she saw her shirt was on backwards. So she, fixed it real quick and she got fined for that. Mine is you have all these other players, male players who, will take off their shirts and whatever, and they're fine. They're just fine. Whereas Serena Williams will say something as like, you owe me an apology and all these other things. She gets fined for all these different things. Or she wears a cat suit that helps her circulation because she just had a traumatic, pregnancy with blood clots. And so has, this a beautiful looking cat suit that, was kind of inspired by Black Panther that is actually to help her medically so she doesn't die. And they're like, no, they find this as inappropriate clothing and, her showing off her body is inappropriate. So we're going to make new dress codes because, we don't find that as, valuable or whatever. And that's BS. But, we're under this microscope as women of color constantly and criticized constantly for how we speak, how we look. God forbid I wear a sheath dress and, good old Karen or Becky wears the same dress. It's fine on them, fine on me because I have a backside. I don't have a front side. God bless me with the back, not the front. But, because I do have a backside, oh, this is not appropriate dress. This is not appropriate. That's showing too much of your figure. We are criticized constantly for how we look. Oh, your hair isn't kept up enough. Your hair is too unruly because it's not straight. Like, we want your hair to be straight. We want it to be colored a certain way. So as women of color in the workforce, we are constantly under microscope and it is real and we are constantly criticized. On top of that, then you have to deal with code switching and shifting how we speak to overcome barriers. And that shit is difficult. It takes a toll on you. It is difficult to fit in a place where you're often the only person of color and you're often isolated, you're often excluded. There's been times where at one of the places I worked, everyone in my group would get together for lunch and they would literally walk right past me and be like, bye, Danielle. And they would not think twice to even consider the idea of asking me to come. And they did this on a regular basis and thought it was cool. Even to the point where the managers were doing it. And it's like, you are a manager of this team and you are setting the culture. And the culture setting is, oh, we can exclude this one, the only Black person on the team, and it's going to be okay. And so many of us go through this and we have to work harder, but don't show anything because God forbid you be deemed as the angry Black woman. And so workplace stress is difficult. It is real. It is difficult. It is exhausting. And I get Naomi. I get Naomi was like, I just need, I can't keep functioning at this level. I keep functioning at this level. I need to step back. I need to put my self care first. I need to set this boundary for me to be good for me. And to have someone say F you to your self care, F you to your boundaries, that don't feel right. That don't feel right to nobody. And so, there was this viral post by Amanda Steinberg, and I love it. And I'll actually add it to the resources that are on the website. But like, she had this post and talks about like, what would America look like if we loved Black people as much as we love their Black culture? And I want to take another step. What would life look like if employers loved their employees enough to make their self-care really a priority? Not when it's convenient to them, and not when there's no, financial loss on the line. But what if employers truly put self-care first for all their employees? What would that look like? What would that be like? I think that would be a great world. I think it'd be a world where I would want to work in. And it's often part of the reason why I didn't want to be in corporate America is because of all the stress and that was involved with being a person of color. Having to hold my tongue often. Don't say things a certain way because then you're going to be deemed angry. Don't have an opinion, but have an opinion. And it's like trying to fit in is difficult. It was difficult, and I didn't feel like my boundaries were when I did try to create boundaries and always feeling like I had to be on, because people would call me on the weekends. They're like, oh, well, you're supposed to be on at any time, so we're going to call you on the weekend because we feel like it. We're going to call you the weekend. We're going to call you at midnight. We're going to call you early in the morning. We're going to expect you to be on at all times. And you can't. We are human. I am a human first. I am a human first. I'm not an employee first. I'm a human first. Naomi Osaka is a human first. But oftentimes we live in a world where we are deemed this work bunny, slave first. And then down the line, when it's convenient, a human that deserves self-care and well-being. And so as an employee, I encourage you just to be proactive about reducing your stress, honoring your needs, and set boundaries. And on top of setting boundaries, set up a response when your boundary gets crossed. Because let's be keeping it real, your boundary's going to get crossed. So being able to have a response when your boundary is crossed is very, very important. But also for employers, if you really, really want to show an example that self-care really matters, if employers really did care about self-care fully and want to show that, create a culture that promotes a healthy work-life balance. And not just put it on paper and like, oh, look, we care about self-care, but actually create a culture that promotes it. Create a culture that is open in communication. So if employees feel comfortable being able to come to you and say, I'm not well, and let them know that it's okay not to be okay. I mean, last year there were so many people of color who were not okay and still having to show up to work and smile when people like George Floyd were getting killed. There was these protests and all these things. And, so many employers are like, nope, we just need you to keep doing the work. We know that you may not be okay, but it's not convenient for us right now. So create a culture that is open, that has open communication, and offer mental health benefits and normalize their use. Normalizing the use of the mental health. Like, again, a lot of employers like, oh, we have these mental health things, da, da, da. Normalizing the use of them and removing that stigma is a game changer. And so I love you, Naomi. I don't know if you'll ever listen to this. You probably won't. But if someone knows her, I encourage you to send this and let her know that I love you. I am so proud of you. If no one told you, well, I know a lot of people did, but I'm proud of you for standing up for you. I'm proud of you for recognizing that your work environment was not a healthy one right now for you, and it's okay, and taking the control that you needed and making your self-care a priority. And the lessons I got from you was which some of them we do know, but some of them, let's keep it open. And I want to make sure people get this, is that, your work environment can affect your mental wellness. Control what you can control, like setting boundaries and keeping them. Prioritize what you need over the opinions and the agendas of others. And let's start normalizing self-care as just, it is what it is. Self-care is not when it's acceptable, when it's convenient. Self-care and making boundaries are whenever you need them. If you need self-care, you need to create a boundary, let's normalize it to be okay. And that it's okay not to be okay. And it's okay to be not okay. And to say that I'm not okay. Let's take away the stigma that I have to put on the smile. Like, this isn't a show anymore. Like, we are not slaves. We are humans first, and we have needs. And sometimes we need to say that we're not okay. And it needs to be okay. So I honor you, Naomi. I honor the people who stood up for her, stood by her. And I do hope there's change. I don't know if there's going to be change in the tennis world. They said that they're like, oh, we now care. Well, we'll see. All I'm saying is, in the workforce, we need to stand up for ourselves. Because if you don't start setting those boundaries and saying, hey, my self-care matters, and showing and not always being there at every hour and saying, like, even though it's like they're calling you in the weekends and you not saying, hey, I need this boundary. This is my time for me and my family. But you not setting those boundaries, you're saying it's okay. What you're saying is, my self-care doesn't matter. So instead of saying that, I need you to learn how to say no. So, say no so you can say yes to yourself. And that's what I got for this week. I love y'all. And I'm sending love to all of you. Healing energy. I know tomorrow is Monday. Let's start off Monday setting ourselves up to thrive, not just survive. We're not superheroes. We're not here to save the day. We're not here to save our employers. We're not here just to survive. We're here to thrive. And thriving means self-care. Thanks for joining us this week on the Hello Well with Danielle show. Make sure to visit our website, hellowellwithdanielle.com, where you can subscribe to our show on iTunes, Spotify, and Amazon Music and never miss an episode. Also, you can follow us on social media at Hello Well with Danielle on Facebook and Instagram, and Hello Well Danny on Twitter. And if you like hella love the show and got some good nuggets out of it, know that I'm not too proud to ask for you to please leave a rating or review on iTunes so that we can continue to expand our reach and help other women of color. Again, thanks so much for listening, and I hope to see you next week. Ciao.